Hello everybody, this is Destrotech. Today I'm going to talk about a Rakdos colorless deck which is tribal and based on constructs and a few Eldrazi. I'm going to talk about what this deck does and how you can use it as an aggro deck and take out your opponent in the first few turns. Let's dive into it. Alright, so we're going to start with the creatures first, and we're going to talk about the mana cost going from 1 and up. Here we have the Bomat Courier, which is our 1-drop. It's a 1/1 haste that attacks and it exiles the top card of your library face down. Then you can pay a red and discard your hand, sacrifice it, you put all the cards that it exiled into your hand. This is a good refiller later in the game when you need a new hand. I would think that you might use it around turn 4 or 5 when you are probably out of cards, because a lot of this deck is going to be low casting cost. This is a great creature and it's a construct, so it plays right into our strategy. Here we have Scrapheap Scrounger. I use it in a lot of my decks. I've been having a lot of fun with this card. Its recursion is amazing. It keeps coming back, and it's a 3/2 for 2. And it can't block, but we're aggro, so we don't care about that. We're Rakdos, so we're gonna be attacking every turn with this bad boy. And you can pay a black and a colorless and exile another creature from your graveyard, return to battlefield. This is great as a combat trick to bring it back at the end of your opponent's turn, and then swing in the next turn with it. You can't block, so you can't use it as a blocker, but you can bring it back and then attack with it next turn, so you can catch your opponent off guard if they forget that it's in your graveyard. Here's Metallic Mimic. This is a 2-drop, 2/1 that when it comes into play, you choose a creature type, and it becomes that creature type. And whenever you play another creature type of that type, then it gets a +1/+1 counter on it. Most of our deck is going to be constructs, so we're going to name construct the second this comes down. And then all of our following constructs are going to come down with a +1/+1 counter on them. This is very, very good in this deck because we have a lot of artifact creatures that are constructs. That can really make our creatures really powerful later in the game, which is going to be crucial considering that this is a 2-drop and we want to make sure that after turn 2 we have more powerful creatures. Otherwise we're going to fall behind later in the game. Here we have the Forerunner of Slaughter. I personally just like this card because it gives other colorless creatures haste. Our deck is artifacts and Eldrazi, so we're able to give everything haste by paying 1 colorless. That's just great. It's a 2-drop for a 3/2. That's pretty powerful. 3/2. It's very similar to this here, Scrapheap Scrounger. So that's nice. The power and for the mana cost is actually really good value. So I like that a lot. I've been using this, playtesting it, and I've liked it a lot in my games. Here you have a Flayer Drone, which is a 3/1 first strike, so it's kind of a blocker, but you can use it for offense as well. But the main point of it is that whenever you play a colorless creature, your opponent loses a life. We have a lot of colorless creatures in this deck, so this is going to make your opponent lose a lot of life. It's going to do several points over the course of the game. If you draw multiple of these, it could do even more because it stacks, right? So that's really crucial. Here we have a Vengeful Rebel. This card is good at taking out your opponent's creatures. When we attack and then they block and then we lose a creature, we can then have this guy come in and do -3/-3 to your opponent's creature, take it out, and then they have less defenses for the next turn. So good card. I like it a lot. We're only running 3 of them, but I think that's enough. We're mostly colorless, so we don't want to have too many colored creatures. Here's another multicolored creature, but it's a creature that buffs most of our deck because we have a lot of artifact creatures. This will give +2/+0 to a artifact creature, which we have a lot of, at the beginning of combat. So you can drop this guy. He's a 3/3 for 3. Drop him, and then immediately that combat, he can buff an artifact creature. And the artifact creature is probably going to swing in. Most of our creatures do 2 or 3 damage, so they can swing in for 4 or 5, which is really, really nice. This also works for vehicles, so this can make our vehicles very powerful. I'm running 3 of this guy. Here we have the vehicle in my deck. I only run this one at the current time. You can put more, or you can change the vehicle even and use this for a harvester or something like that. But I'm using this because it instantly comes in. You don't need to tap any other creatures to crew it. It just swings in for 5. With the previously mentioned creature, the Weldfast Engineer, this thing could be a 7/3. That's pretty amazing for trample haste. So in this deck, I think it works out. It's also colorless, so it can be buffed with our land that I'll be getting to soon. So yeah, that pretty much does it for the creatures. Here's our creature base. It's the majority of the deck. Alright, so here are the spells of the deck. We're running 4 Grasp of Darkness, which is 2 black for target creature gains, or has -4/-4. This is great at taking out early game creatures. For 2 mana, this is a great value because -4/-4 is double the amount of mana cost spent. So this is played in a lot of decks. It's instant speed, great removal card, great at taking out early game threats. Not good late game because the creatures are probably bigger, but if you do combat damage and then you use this, that can be a great combat trick. So we're using 4 of these bad boys. Then here we have Unlicensed Disintegration. This is a card that's just really well in this deck. It destroys target creature, and they take 3 damage if we have an artifact. And we have a lot of artifacts, so this is probably going to do 3 damage when we use it. Great at removal. It's instant speed as well. Great combat trick. Use it before they block, I would suggest. But 3 damage to their face. We're an aggro deck, so any damage we can get in addition to the creatures is fantastic. Here we have Swarm Surge. This is a 3 casting cost sorcery, so it's not instant, but it's a +2/+0 and to all your creatures. And then if your creatures are colorless, they get first strike. Now, most of our deck is going to be colorless, so most of our creatures are going to have first strike. This is a good card to use to make your opponent have to either sacrifice creatures, because you're probably going to kill their creatures with yours because you're going to be so big. But it's a good way to kind of wipe their board or just do enough damage that you take them out. So this card, I'm only running 1 of it. I've thought about using multiple, and you can certainly do that. But overall, I find that just putting 1 in there and just using it sometimes can be a silver bullet. So I recommend using 1 of those. Overall, I think this is a pretty good removal suite. This can deal with a lot of creatures in the current standard format. So this is going to be our spell base for the current deck. Alright, so here is our land base. We're running 8 swamps, 2 mountains. We're using 3 Ruins of Oran-Reef. This is fantastic because all of our creatures are, or most of our creatures are going to be colorless. So it's going to put +1/+1 counter on them, including the vehicle. So that just plays into our strategy. We're a bit of a rush deck, so if we draw this early game, it could be bad. But it helps us be competitive late game because our creatures are bigger when they come into play, which is really crucial when the opponent's playing bigger creatures. Here we have 2 Westvale Abbeys. This is great because we have a lot of creatures in our deck, and we can sacrifice several creatures and create a giant flying beast. It's a 9/7 flying, I believe, haste with lifelink. So this can get us back in the game if we're low on life, and it can definitely finish off the game. Also, it's indestructible, so when it flips over into the demon, it's an indestructible demon of death and destruction. So that's a great game finisher if we are running late game and the game has not ended from our aggro. Here I'm running 4 Foreboding Ruins and 4 Smoldering Marshes. This just because of our mana fixing. We don't have too many red and black spells, but we're more black intensive, which is why we're running more swamps. But we do have some red spells and some spells that use red, so we need to have a decent amount of red. So this is our land base. We're using this for this deck, and it plays pretty well. Alright, so here we have our sideboard. We're running 4 Transgress the Mind, which reveals the opponent's hand, and you can choose a card with converted mana cost 3 or greater and exile it. Great removal card, one of the best removal cards in the game in the current format for standard, that exiles something from their hand so you can remove threats before they even occur in the game. Fantastic card. It's used in a lot of sideboards, a lot of main decks even. This is a great card overall. We're using another of the Vengeful Etherborns, and it's able to kill creatures. So if they're running a lot of creatures in their deck, we might want to sideboard in a 4th one. It's a great card. We can sacrifice the Bomat Courier to bring this into play and get the -3/-3 in case they don't block us. I would recommend attacking and then sacking, or attacking and losing a creature, then using this card. It's just great for removal. Here we have 4 Ruinous Path. They're playing Planeswalkers and we can't get through. Good card. You can also destroy an opponent's creature and get rid of opposition that can block us because we're aggro. Or you can awaken it, although I don't expect us to ever get to 7 mana, especially with 23 lands. Here's Lost Legacy. This is something we can play early in the game to remove certain threats, like if they're using the Marvel deck, which gets an Ulamog out quite early in the game. You can Lost Legacy as soon as possible, turn 3, name Ulamog, remove it. That's going to be the card that probably kills us because we don't have a way of dealing with it. So I would use Lost Legacy in a lot of sideboards whenever you play black, especially if black is a strong suit in your deck. We're running a lot of black, majority black, so this is a great sideboard card. I use it in most of my decks. Here is Kalitas, using a lot of sideboards, a lot of main decks. Card's fantastic. It's a great late game card. Turn 4, we are already planning on hopefully killing our opponent around that time, but in case the game is a little bit longer and drawn out, this is a good card to sideboard in if you know it's going to be a long game. It can win the long race, so this is a great card to sideboard in. So I recommend having 2 of these in your sideboard. Alright, so as far as upgrade opportunities, I think that the only card I can really think of that could be beneficial in this deck is Liliana, the Last Hope. She's quite expensive right now, but she's quite powerful. She can be used to take out the opponent's creatures to make sure our creatures get through for damage. And so I think that she is a great include in this deck because the majority of the deck is going to be black. So she can definitely be played quite easily on turn 3. We're hoping to play creatures, but if the opponent is running some early game creatures, we want to make sure we can remove them. She can minus them, which can lower their power, lower their toughness, possibly kill them, but mainly make their creatures inferior to ours. And we want to make sure our creatures have a stronger power and can survive combat. So she's overall just a great card, including a lot of decks. She's expensive, but if you can manage to fit in your deck and can afford her, I would recommend running several of her. I find most decks run 3 of her. Personally, I'll run 3 of her as well. You don't want to see her too much because you don't want to have 2 in your hand and have 1 out. And so you want to run like 3. I find that if you run 3 of a card, you're generally going to draw once per game. So I'd recommend if you have the money and you have these cards, run this one. This is a good card in the deck. It helps lower the defenses. So yeah, you can definitely use this. Alright, well thanks for watching my deck tech video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this gives you some ideas about Rakdos aggro with colorless and tribal. Thank you for watching it, and if you enjoyed it, go ahead and like my video. You can subscribe or you can click the bell on the right and you can watch my other videos that I make. I'm planning on producing some more of these videos about deck techs that I have. I'm really excited for the new current standard format. There's a lot of combos, but I generally tend to make decks that are more kind of unique and less combo-ish and more kind of aggro or control. So yeah, if you like that kind of stuff, go ahead and subscribe and you can watch more of these videos. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.